Eh? Doctor Who? What's he talking about?
Good question. Let's find out. Our story begins on a cold November night on Earth, 1963. At Coal Hill School in London, two teachers, Ian Chesterton, a science teacher, and Barbara Wright, a history teacher, are confused about a new student, 15-year-old Susan Foreman.
Susan Foreman? Oh, she your problem too?
Yes.
And you don't know what to make of her?
No.
Susan seems to know more than the teachers about some things.
That's not right.
But she's clueless about others.
Don't be silly, Susan. The United States has a decimal system. You know perfectly well that we do not.
Of course the decimal system hasn't started yet.
And if you don't think that's weird enough, just look at the way she dances. The teachers decide to follow Susan home to speak to her grandfather, who she apparently lives with. But Susan leads them to a junkyard on Totter's Lane.
Silly, isn't it? I feel frightened, as if we were about to interfere in something that is best left alone.
Following Susan into the junkyard, the teachers find an old police box and some junk. But no Susan.
Feel it, you feel it?
It's a faint vibration.
It's alive!
Ian and Barbara confront an old man who calls himself the Doctor because they believe he's got Susan locked up in the police box.
We can't leave him here. Doesn't it seem obvious to you he's got her locked up in there?
Although, the Doctor did arrive after Ian and Barbara, so I'm not exactly sure how he was supposed to get her into the police box. Anyway, the old man refuses to let them into the box. He mocks them for being silly and suggests they go and find a policeman. Just as the teachers are about to leave, the police box door opens from the inside and the teachers push their way in. It's explained that the box is called the TARDIS, and it's actually a spaceship in disguise.
Well, I made up the name TARDIS from the initials, time and relative dimension in space.
And it's bigger on the inside than the outside. The Doctor and Susan are not from this world.
I was born in another time, another world.
Now look here, Susan, you...
They are afraid of the authorities because they are hiding on Earth, although what they are hiding from is not clear.
Have you ever thought what it's like to be wanderers in the fourth dimension? Have you? To be exiles? Susan and I are cut off from our own planet, without friends or protection. But one day, we shall get back. Yes, one day.
Now that their secret has been discovered, the Doctor and Susan must leave before Ian and Barbara tell the authorities. But Susan refuses to leave. She tells her grandfather that she loves it in 1963 and wants to stay. The Doctor knows that the humans will want to study Susan if she stays, so he takes matters into his own hands, and with the flick of a switch on the console, the ship takes off.
Oh no, Grandfather, no!
Let me go! No! Get back to the ship, child! Hold it!
The TARDIS lands in a prehistoric landscape. The Doctor isn't sure where or when they are. The Doctor opens the doors to prove to Ian that they have travelled in time and space. The Doctor and Susan are very concerned because the TARDIS hasn't changed its appearance.
There's still a police box. Why hasn't it changed? Dear, dear. How very disturbing.
Don't worry, Doctor. You'll learn to love it. After smoking a rather excellent pipe, the Doctor and his companions get kidnapped by primitives and locked up in the Cave of Skulls.
Stench. Stench.
The primitives have lost the secret of how to make fire, and they want the Doctor to show them how to make it. To the Doctor, Ian and Barbara are like primitive savages, but Ian and Barbara weren't able to understand this until they are faced with people who are like primitive savages to them. After escaping the cave, the Doctor and his companions discover an injured tribesman, and they decide to help him. Well, some of them do.
Let go of me! What are you doing?
Well, I was going to get him to draw our way back to the TARDIS.
The travellers take the injured man back to his tribe, and Ian makes fire for them, but they get locked up again.
Why are you keeping us here?
Using fire, they create an illusion of flaming skulls to distract the primitives, allowing them to escape and get back to the TARDIS. The TARDIS dematerializes, but it quickly becomes clear that the Doctor is unwilling or unable to take them back to Earth.
Saying that you don't know how to work this thing?
Of course I can't. I'm not a miracle worker.
The TARDIS lands in a petrified jungle, the travellers unaware that it is highly radioactive. They encounter a strange petrified creature, making this technically the first monster in Doctor Who, unless you count the Doctor in this scene from the last story. Ian and Barbara want to return home, but the Doctor wants to explore a futuristic alien city. The Doctor sabotages the TARDIS and claims he needs mercury for the fluid link before they can leave. And the only place to find it is in the city. Exploring the city, Barbara is captured by a mysterious creature. After discovering a Geiger counter, the Doctor, Ian and Susan realise they have been exposed to radiation, and the Doctor suggests they leave immediately, without Barbara. The creatures who live in the city are the Daleks, fascist mutants who have encased themselves in metal travel machines that get their power via static electricity through the metal floor of the city.
After the neutronic war, our Dalek forefathers retired into the city.
The team are captured by the Daleks, and Susan is sent to get radiation medicine. She meets a race of humanoids called the 𝗲𝗨s, who are also indigenous to this planet, which is called Skaro.
The only interest we have in the 𝗲𝗨s is their total extermination.
Locked in a cell, the team overpower their Dalek guard by severing its connection to the floor, and they remove the mutant creature from inside. Ian gets into the Dalek casing and they escape. Meanwhile, the Daleks have offered food and medicine to the 𝗲𝗨s as a peace offering. But when the 𝗲𝗨s come to collect the food, well, I probably don't need to tell you how that goes down. Thanks to Ian's warning, some 𝗲𝗨s escape, and they explain that there was a neutronic war between the Dals and the 𝗲𝗨s long ago, which devastated the planet and caused the Daleks to mutate.
Just the why destroy without any apparent thought or reason?
A dislike for the unlike?
I don't follow you.
They're afraid of you because you're different from them.
The Doctor wants to leave, but he discovers that the TARDIS fluid link was taken from them whilst captive in the city. The 𝗲𝗨s are pacifists, but Ian shows the 𝗲𝗨s that sometimes you have to fight to protect the things that you love, by stealing someone's girlfriend and getting himself punched in the face. The Daleks want to use another neutron bomb to increase the radiation levels on the planet. Being mutants, the Daleks thrive off the radiation, but it would certainly kill the 𝗲𝗨s. To sneak into the Dalek city, Ian leads a party of 𝗲𝗨s through treacherous caves and past mutant monsters, and some sort of giant deadly toilet flush. The Doctor sabotages some of the Daleks' systems, allowing Ian and the 𝗲𝗨s to sneak into the city. The Daleks decide it would take too long to create a neutronium bomb, so they decide to blow up their reactor cores instead. Before they can do so though, the 𝗲𝗨s attack the control room and they turn off the Daleks' power supply. The dying Daleks beg the Doctor to help them by fixing their system, but he refuses.
Even if I wanted to, I don't know how.
Having defeated the Daleks, the group say their farewells to the 𝗲𝗨s, who they've become quite friendly with. As soon as the TARDIS is in flight, there's an explosion on the console and the 4 travellers fall to the floor. They awaken to a series of unexplained events. Something's wrong with the TARDIS and everyone is acting very strangely. Everyone is suffering from strange headaches, there are strange images on the scanner screen, and the doors are opening and closing on their own.
They must have been forced open when we crashed.
Crashed? No, the ship can't crash. It's impossible.
Yeah, right. Everyone is suspicious of each other about what happened. The Doctor accuses Ian and Barbara of trying to take control of the ship. Or as the Doctor puts it...
And you both knocked both Susan and I unconscious.
Barbara thinks an alien entity has gotten on board, and Susan gets a bit stabby.
You tried to force me to return you to England.
Oh, don't be so stupid!
After arguments, drug abuse, more stabbing from Susan, and a bizarre attempt by Ian to strangle the Doctor, Barbara works out that the TARDIS itself is trying to tell them something.
My machine can't think.
You say it has a built-in defense mechanism?
Yes, it has.
Well, that's where we've been wrong. Originally, the machine wasn't at fault, we were. And it's been trying to tell us so ever since.
A machine that can think for itself?
Yes.
The TARDIS fast return switch had become stuck on the console due to a faulty spring under the button, which caused the TARDIS to travel back to the birth of a solar system, where the magnetic forces threatened to destroy the TARDIS. The Doctor fixes the spring with just seconds to spare.
You see, there's a little spring inside it, and it was stuck. It hadn't released itself.
Despite all the paranoia and stabbing, these bizarre events allow the crew the opportunity to bond. The Doctor begins to soften when he uncharacteristically apologises to Barbara and begins to see the value of his new companions.
As we learn about each other, so we learn about ourselves.
Ian accepts the fact that the Doctor really can't control the TARDIS. He accepts the situation and begins to start enjoying the adventure.
Well, I think that's absolutely splendid, Chesterton. Yes, it suits you.
The TARDIS has landed on a snowy mountain on Earth in the year 1289, but a circuit has blown, meaning the TARDIS is without power, and the travellers are afraid they will freeze to death.
Must have been made by a giant.
On the mountainside, they meet the famous Venetian explorer Marco Polo, who believes that the TARDIS can fly. Marco takes the TARDIS as a gift for his master Kublai Khan, hoping that, in return, Khan will allow him to return home to Venice. Marco takes the TARDIS key from the Doctor.
My plan has worked. The strangers and their unusual caravan accompany me to Lop.
You should have let me kill them.
Why? Because their clothes are different from ours?
The Doctor and his companions have no choice but to travel with Marco's caravan from the snowy Pamir Plateau, across the treacherous Gobi Desert, and through the heart of Imperial Cathay, eventually arriving at Kublai Khan's summer temple in Chengdu. The Doctor befriends the elderly Kublai Khan and almost wins the TARDIS back in a game of backgammon. After being imprisoned for trying to steal the TARDIS back, the team learn of a plot to assassinate Kublai Khan, so they warn Marco, thus earning his trust. Marco thwarts the plot by defeating the treacherous Tigana, who has been a constant source of trouble throughout the story. Tigana then kills himself rather than be captured and punished for his crimes. Marco sympathises with the travellers' desire to return home because he too wishes to return home. He thanks them by giving them back the TARDIS key, explaining to his master that it was the right thing to do. Khan in turn allows Marco to finally return home. Having repaired the broken circuit, the TARDIS departs. The TARDIS soon lands on the planet Marinus, on a beach made of sandy glass, surrounded by a sea of acid. The team discover several empty submarines on the beach and eventually make their way to an imposing tower where they save an elderly man called Arbitan from an attack by the occupants of the submarines. Arbitan explains that the tower contains the conscience of Marinus, an ancient machine that maintains law and order across the whole planet and even blocks evil thoughts.
They no longer had to decide what was wrong or right. The machine decided for them.
I see, and in that case it was possible to eliminate evil from the minds of men for all time.
That is exactly what happened.
The tower's attackers are called the 𝗲𝗀𝘀, who are led by 𝗃𝗃, who has worked out how to resist the effects of the machine and now wants it for himself. The machine has been reprogrammed so that it will now work on the 𝗲𝗀𝘀, but it needs 4 keys to activate. The keys are scattered across the planet, and 𝗃𝗏𝗀 blackmails the Doctor and his companions into retrieving them for him by putting an invisible force field around the TARDIS. The team are given wearable teleporters called travel dials and are sent firstly to the city of 𝗵𝗺ton, where they can apparently have anything that their hearts desire.
Our one wish is to fulfill your every need.
It soon becomes clear, however, that the Morpho, a race of disembodied brains in jars, are using hypnosis to control the entire population, and the beauty and affluence of 𝗵𝗺ton is all an illusion.
Ah, now, this might be helpful. Yes, if I can have instruments like these, I might be able to overcome the fault in the time mechanism aboard the ship.
Barbara defeats the Morpho by smashing their life support systems, which sets the population free. The team meet up with Sabbatha, 𝗃𝗏𝗀's daughter, and Alto, who were both sent by 𝗃𝗏𝗀 to find the keys. The Doctor goes on ahead, while Ian, Barbara and Susan travel to the Screaming Jungle.
Go away!
They overcome a series of elaborate traps meant for the 𝗲𝗀𝘀, and then battle deadly sentient plant life before recovering the second key. Ian and Barbara then teleport to a frozen wasteland, where they are saved from the freezing cold by a man called 𝗃𝗀𝘀, who tries to rob them and attacks Barbara. The third key is encased in a block of ice, but thawing it out unleashes an army of ice soldiers who eventually kill 𝗃𝗀𝘀. In the next location, Ian is framed for murder, but the Doctor defends him in court and deduces the identity of the real killer, who conveniently had the final key.
Goodbye, my friends.
The team return to the tower, only to find that 𝗃𝗏𝗀 has been killed by 𝗃𝗃, and the 𝗲𝗀𝘀 now control Marinus.
𝗃𝗏𝗀 is dead. Do you hear me? I, 𝗃𝗃, am in control now.
Ian tricks 𝗃𝗃 by giving him a fake key, which causes the conscience of Marinus to explode, killing 𝗃𝗃 and all the nearby 𝗲𝗀𝘀s. With the conscience destroyed, the planet Marinus must now make their own decisions, which the Doctor believes is a good thing.
But I don't believe that man was made to be controlled by machines. Machines can make laws, but they cannot preserve justice. Only human beings can do that.
After all, it's better to decide for yourself than to have your decisions made for you. The TARDIS next arrives in a tomb in 15th century Mexico, where Barbara is mistaken for a reincarnation of the tomb's occupant, the High Priest 𝗃𝗃𝗀. After leaving the tomb, the heavy stone door closes behind them, cutting them off from the TARDIS. Whilst trying to work out how to get back to the TARDIS, the team fight for survival in a savage and barbaric society.
You're monsters. All of you monsters.
Barbara tries to use her new position of authority to put an end to the Aztec practice of human sacrifice.
Stop! I, 𝗃𝗃𝗀, command you.
But the Doctor warns her not to interfere.
This is the beginning of the end of the sun god.
What are you talking about?
Oh, don't you see? If I could start the destruction of everything that's evil here, then everything that is good would survive when Cortez lands.
But you can't rewrite history. Not one line.
Barbara, the High Priests are coming.
Barbara, one last appeal. What you are trying to do is utterly impossible. I know. Believe me, I know.
Ian is repeatedly forced to fight an Aztec warrior called 𝗃𝗀𝗀 to the death. Susan is almost forced into an arranged marriage.
I won't do it. I won't.
and the Doctor accidentally gets engaged.
Where did you get hold of this?
My fiancée.
I see. You're what?
Yes, I made some cocoa and got engaged.
Due to her attempts to change the Aztec way of life, eventually Barbara is declared a false goddess. But before she and Susan can be punished, Ian saves them by fighting 𝗗𝗃 one last time. Ian's battle bought the Doctor enough time to open the tomb door by using a wheel and pulley system that he made himself, an invention that the Aztecs never discovered. This allows the team to return to the TARDIS and leave, lamenting the fact that they weren't able to make a difference.
What's the point of traveling through time and space? We can't change anything.
Ultimately, the team changed nothing, but the timeline was preserved, with the Aztec civilization doomed to fall because of its unwillingness to change for the better.
There's one thing about it, Doctor. We're certainly different from when we started out with you.
That's funny. Grandfather and I were talking about that just before you came in. How you both changed.
Oh, we've all changed.
Have I?
Yes.
Yes, it all started out as a mild curiosity in the junkyard. Now it's turned out to be quite a great spirit of adventure, don't you think?
Yes. Well, we've had some pretty rough times, and even that doesn't stop us.
The TARDIS lands on a spaceship in orbit around a planet called the Sensphere, which is home to an alien race called the Sensorites. The Sensorites are using their telepathic powers to prevent the crew of the spaceship from leaving orbit, because a human spaceship crashed on their planet before, and apparently unleashed a deadly disease on the Sensorite population. Ian and Barbara discover that the planet is rich in molybdenum, a very valuable mineral, but the Sensorites don't want the humans to leave because they know the humans will return in greater force to harvest the mineral. The Sensorites remove the lock from the TARDIS, preventing the Doctor and his companions from getting inside.
What can we do, Doctor? Break down the door?
Undisturb the field of dimensions inside the TARDIS? We dare not!
Susan seems to have an aptitude for telepathy and communicating with the Sensorites.
You will not make decisions on your own accord. Now, do you understand? Is that quite clear? Well, is it?
Look, I'm not saying I'm as clever as you or anything. Of course I'm not. But I won't be pushed aside. I'm not a child anymore, Grandfather. I'm not.
The Sensorites eventually allow everyone to go down to the planet because the Doctor promises to look into curing the disease, which Ian contracts.
Ian!
Some Sensorites trust the humans, others want them destroyed, and a political struggle breaks out amongst the Sensorite leadership.
You are his second opinion, yet he makes his decisions without you.
He makes a wise decision.
But based entirely upon trust. Do you trust these Earth creatures?
The Doctor discovers that the source of the disease is actually poison, which is being introduced to the Sensorites' water supply by surviving humans from the ship that crashed here, who want to kill the Sensorites so that they can harvest the planet's valuable minerals. The Doctor and his companions help the Sensorites to apprehend the rogue humans, who think they are at war with the Sensorites.
Oh, I know it did your people incalculable harm.
I could have killed him. I wanted to. But that would not be the way, would it?
No.
He could have destroyed the entire Sensorite nation.
Yes, but the fact is you didn't kill him. Shows great promise for the future of your people.
After the Doctor has developed an antidote, the Sensorites allow all of the humans to go home, proving that they were not evil monsters. It was the humans who were evil, driven mad by greed and the Sensorites' telepathic attempts to protect themselves. Everyone's trouble could have been avoided if only they had trusted one another from the beginning.
I realize that we Sensorites have a lot to learn from the people of Earth.
Well, Grandfather and I don't come from Earth. Oh, it's ages since we've seen our planet. It's quite like Earth. But at night the sky is a burnt orange, and the leaves on the trees are bright silver.
The Doctor suggests Susan develops her telepathic ability when they get home.
Oh, I think you obviously have a gift in that direction, and when we get home to our own place, I think we should try and perfect it.
When will we get back, Grandfather?
I don't know, my dear. This old ship of mine seems to be an aimless thing. However, we don't worry about it, do we? Do you?
Sometimes I feel I'd like to belong somewhere. Not just be a wanderer. Still, I'm not unhappy.
Good.
The Doctor is convinced he's brought Ian and Barbara home to London in 1963, but the TARDIS instead materialises in France, 1784, one of the bloodiest years in French history.
The Doctor's put us down right in the middle of the French Revolution.
The Reign of Terror.
We might not get back to the ship if Grandfather hears we're in the Reign of Terror.
Why not?
It's his favourite period in the history of Earth.
After investigating a house to find out what year it is, Ian, Barbara and Susan are captured by French soldiers who assume they are part of an escape chain, which is an illegal movement dedicated to freeing the innocent people that have been condemned to death by the bloodthirsty Robespierre and the French government.
Take them to Paris to the guillotine!
Ian, Susan and Barbara are taken to jail to await their execution.
Gets very lonely in here sometimes. Very lonely indeed. Now, if we were to be friends, eh?
The Doctor narrowly escapes being burned alive and then walks to Paris, where he disguises himself as a French officer in order to free his companions. But by the time he gets to the jail, it is too late. Ian has already escaped, and Barbara and Susan are on their way to the guillotine.
The moment they start to unhitch it, we'll make a run for it.
I don't think I can, Barbara. I don't feel very well.
Oh, well, if you're not feeling very well, I guess you'd better stay there and get guillotined then. Fortunately, Barbara and Susan are rescued by members of the escape chain and taken to a safe house.
Not all Frenchmen can allow innocent people to be led to the guillotine, Barbara. Jules has saved many lives.
It would appear that my luck is running out.
Barbara and Susan are tricked, however, and are returned to jail, but the Doctor manages to get Barbara released. Whilst in jail, Ian was given an important message by his dying cellmate, so he tries to find James Sterling, an English spy, to warn him that France intends to attack England soon. A French official called Lemaitre, who has been seen as an enemy thus far, reveals himself to be James Sterling, and he promises to help set Susan free if Ian and Barbara help him to discover what Napoleon Bonaparte is planning. Bonaparte wants to overthrow the bloodthirsty Robespierre so that he can rule France. So Ian goes with Sterling to try to stop Robespierre's arrest and execution. But Barbara knows only too well that history cannot be changed.
Robespierre will be guillotined, whatever we do.
I've told you of our position so often.
Yes, I know. You can't influence or change history. I learned that lesson with the Aztecs.
The events will happen just as they're written.
Robespierre is arrested, causing a significant shift in political power and civil unrest. And in the ensuing chaos, the Doctor rescues Susan and the team return to the TARDIS.
Suppose we'd written Napoleon a letter, telling him, you know, some of the things that were going to happen to him.
Wouldn't have made any difference here. He'd have forgotten it or lost it or thought it was written by a maniac.
I suppose if we tried to kill him with a gun, the bullet would have missed him.
Well, it's hardly fair to speculate, is it? Can it be possible, then, that this is the end?
No, Doctor. We've barely even begun.